Hello, and welcome everyone to today's webinar featuring our head of customer education, JJ Janikis at Asana, and our very own Ryan Greaves. Today, we're going to be diving into Asana's award-winning certification program. But while we wait for some more folks to join us, I want to first extend my genuine thanks for spending part of your day with us. My name is Laura Scruggs. I'm from the Incredible team, and it's lunchtime where I'm based in the US, just outside of snowy Baltimore, Maryland. And I am thrilled to be with this group of folks from, it looks like, all over the world. So please, if you'd like, drop us a line in the chat, say hello, let us know where you're joining us from, what kind of credentials you're issuing today, or what you're most excited about learning from the discussion. For those of you just joining, welcome to today's webinar, How Asana Built a High-Impact Certification Program That Scales. We are going to look behind the curtain to see the processes, the people, and the systems behind Accredible's inaugural credentialing program of the year. And we have a lot to unpack with our special guest today, and I'm really excited to dive into the Asana team success story with you all. Before I turn it over to Ryan to lead today's discussion, I have a couple quick housekeeping notes for you all. We are going to have time for a brief Q&A after we wrap up the panel. So please submit your questions for our panelists using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Our behind the scenes team is going to answer some of those directly and select some to be answered live at the end of the presentation. Lastly, everyone registered for the webinar today will receive a link to view and share the recording on demand. With that, I'm thrilled to turn it over to you, Ryan. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. And good to see where everyone's dialing in today from literally all over the place. Hopefully everyone's staying warm. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we are dealing with extreme cold and a foot of snow to still bury most of people in. But JJ, thanks for joining us. I know you're in New York, where it's cold and snowy as well, but thanks for joining us today.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Before we rewind and talk a little bit about how all of the program came together, I want to kind of start where you've landed, because the scale and impact, a big reason why you even won the Credentialing Program of the Year award, is very hard to ignore. So, since starting just over a year ago, issued nearly 74,000 credentials, hit 91% credential share rate, which is very impressive to know that people are excited to share these, embed these in their LinkedIn, share them on their news feeds, kept learner satisfaction extremely high consistently through that whole process. And what I really love, and you've done such a great job, is really showing business impact, including here, 6x lift in conversion of lead source by the Asana Academy, which Laura and I are on the marketing team. We are incredible. So that's music to our ears when we see how learning and different channels are leading to actually business impact and momentum from a marketing perspective. And that's earned recognition from Forbes as a top AI certification, of course, the Credentialing Program of the Year. So first off, congrats. That's amazing work. I know that's a lot of work on you and your team, but if we could rewind for a moment, what sparked the push to build the certification program and at the beginning, and why was it such a strategic focus for Asana?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan and Laura, for really inviting me to share today. I always love kind of talking about the experiences of building credentialing programs, customer education. So to kind of rewind and play back how we got here, I was specifically hired to be the program manager for certifications at the time, where the company was in a moment of kind of strategic focus and thinking about how we really expand into larger businesses and this kind of like enterprise play. And we had an established Asana Academy for our self-service e-learning, which included live trainings and courses. And we were looking at the time to really dedicate a program for credentials. And so it was up to me to really define what that really looked like. And I came in with a dedicated role, a dedicated goal, and a lot of the cross-functional resources to really make it happen. And that came really tops down from our new leadership at the time. And many of them were coming in from Salesforce. And as many of you who are in the credentialing world know, Trailhead is kind of the model for credentialing programs and certification. So there was a lot of authentic buy-in from leadership on the head of revenue, marketing, to really drive the certification program and get the resources that we need. Um, we really grounded this in kind of three strategic pillars, which kind of defines what we'll kind of talk about within the program. Was it really needed to help meet goals for customer adoption? So how can credentials really drive a customer to be a more sophisticated user of a software product? We also wanted this to drive some of our thought leadership goals. Education is a great space where you can really get people to think beyond just a product and how it's really serving career-based goals and needs in the workforce. And then third, it can really drive demand for your product as well. There's the ability to really integrate it into campaigns, drive new users into a program, and really expand kind of growth opportunities within the accounts that you have as well. So with that, we were really able to connect it to many of our go-to-market goals, which really helped the messaging, positioning, and getting the buy-in that we needed with our cross-functional partners to land the program.
That's excellent. I love the approach with it because and having that initial buy-in is so key, right? And so having the executives coming from Salesforce or that experience and having a model of some of those big programs that are kind of industry standards is really good to kind of see what that can turn into. So I love the backbone. Let's take that strategy and talk a little bit about structure because there's many programs that are trying to get off the ground or looking to get off the ground, and they might have even identified some of those key pillars that you talked about as far as why they would want to develop a program, but actually putting a framework and kind of governance model around how are we actually going to bring this to life, operationalizing it as far as how credentials are created, how they're governed, how they map to kind of meaningful learner outcomes. A framework and governance model really and taxonomy really turn that
Mhm.
scattered badges of ad hoc no rhyme or reason why we're issuing, and it really turns it into a kind of a coherent, credible system. How did you approach that from a credentialing taxonomy and framework, and what have you learned? I know, even since you started, you kind of had to shift that a little bit. If you could talk a little bit how you've done that.
Yeah. So our approach going into this was really thinking mostly from like, what does the customer want and need? I think we were really addressing some of the things that we were hearing from customers, members of our really strong community, that they were looking for best practices and they wanted more of a POV from Asana on how to do some meaningful work within their organization. So that kind of grounded things. Then, from kind of a credentialing program standpoint, I think one of the biggest decisions you have to make is this going to be a high stakes certification program or a little bit more like low stakes, more based in kind of the learning and verification? High stakes, just to kind of clarify, from my background, is more of like this is the psychometrically based exams, assessments that are really gated and moderated. And that was not an approach we chose to take. We really wanted to ground this in the learning and still maintain valid assessments through quizzes and exams. But so that was kind of one of the first decisions that we made. From there, we wanted to really establish a program that could be a little bit more modular. And by modular, we wanted to be able to kind of break up some of the programs so that learners could complete in smaller segments and then ultimately work towards larger credentials. So that really helped ground us in kind of what we decided in the kind of taxonomy for terminology to create these kind of two categories of our credentials. One, the entry point is a skill badge. These are kind of lighter weight credentials where there is some coursework that you would do, some practice that ultimately kind of ends in a quiz to verify your knowledge. Then the kind of higher credential that we have is a more official certificate. The certificates are really more based in kind of a role-based practice. There's more extended learning that goes with it, as well as a capstone project and a more rigorous exam to verify that knowledge and put it into practice. So those were kind of the two approaches that we took. When we started this strategy, we were thinking about, what is our immediate like 1 year goal, right? We had a goal to launch this in 1 year. And so we needed to know what can we meaningfully accomplish in that first year, but also thinking about what is our kind of 3 year plan for this entire program. So initially we scoped out with a lot of the stakeholders the kind of initial release. So we decided to prioritize building what is now called our Asana Foundation skill badge. So that was really an ability to kind of codify what the customers were asking for, which was more verified best practices in Asana. But where we really saw the most opportunity is thinking about the kind of the role of what people are doing with Asana. And that's really building and implementing workflows within their organization. So that was the inspiration for what is now called the Workflow Specialist Certificate. And so we mapped that out under kind of our first year and then saw opportunities to kind of scale that with additional skill badges and certificates over time. And so just, yeah, so that's kind of our initial kind of background in what we launched with and how we kind of determined the different levels of the program.
That's great. It's very well thought out, and I think it's a great approach. And obviously, it's paid dividends. How did you, if I dig into a little bit of kind of the behind the scenes, how did you come about thinking about what content? I know you talked about what you were going to build the foundations first. Um,
Mhm.
how did you come about the content? Did you have a lot of existing content to start working that you needed to refresh to build into that, or was it straight from scratch, or how did you pull in the different SMEs across, your org to source kind of the knowledge that went into this?
Yeah, it was a combination of both. So we did have an established Asana Academy that did have some courses. I think we ultimately took a more ground up approach here where we really totally redesigned the learning style for the credentials. So really giving a new kind of like POV, a little bit of like a narrative to some of the credentials as well. We were able to apply some of the other assets like videos that were already created to kind of insert them into the lessons, which was a huge help
Hmm.
there. And um, yeah, I think some of the things that like evolved there was that we were seeing that what we really wanted to kind of accomplish was more kind of modularization, to kind of use this example of Asana of like this multi-homing so that courses could be a part of multiple learning experiences. It was a part of why we really conceptualized these skill badges, which skills build on each other. And so we wanted the information that could exist in one skill could apply to another skill. And so we wanted to really be able to kind of put course elements across multiple programs so that a learner also feels like, oh, I've accomplished some amount of learning that I can get credit for if I'm also developing another skill and seeing how those connect with one another. We That was always a part of the initial plan, and I think it's a kind of like a lessons learned and evolution. We're kind of figuring out how to put that more into practice in a more you know tactical approach with the tools that we have available to us.
That's great. Yeah, it's always helpful to see what you have. I mean, everyone's kind of starting from a different starting point from what the existing, what exists there in the organization. So it's great to always hear where people are starting from. And I know you talked a little bit about just the earning the skill badges as, kind of keeps the momentum going for, especially from our learner, right? They don't have to wait
Hmm.
all the way till some capstone certification or certificate. And a lot of programs kind of struggle with that, keeping learners motivated, let alone getting them to share their credentials. And you've seen some really powerful
Yeah.
organic signals, right? I'd love to share a little bit about including a surprise, TikTok moment that helped even drive a large amount of new learners to the program, which is awesome to see. How did you design that program to feel valuable, credible, and like worth sharing? What was the thought that kind of went into that from the beginning?
Yeah. So a couple of stories here. First was really how we thought about the program overall. And so when I was sharing more about how we decided to emphasize more of the kind of role-based nature of the program and this concept of the workflow and the workflow specialist as kind of the driving program for our credentials. That really helped us allow us to kind of like step back and say, okay, well, who is this program really for? Yes, it's for Asana as a product, but it really sits into the work that people are doing every day. And so that allow us to really think about that this is a program that's for collaborative work management and defining and naming it the collaborative work management certification program so that we could really drive more skill-based action and role-based action that kind of sits in the ways that people are doing work, and they also happen to be doing that work with Asana. So that was kind of a kind of a first approach and how we really directed this towards the end kind of user and how it's really fitting their needs and how they're going to develop skills and also advance in their careers. And I think that that resonates with people because ultimately, when you earn these credentials, it's something that you want and should be able to share and to share them that it's going to advance your career so that your organization knows how you're enhancing yourself and the workforce knows that you're enhancing yourself. And so, where do people do that? They do that on LinkedIn primarily. So, we wanted that kind of organic traction to happen so that people could talk about it and feel proud about the credentials that they were sharing. The second story is, we launched this in October of 2024, and in March of last year, like a random Tuesday, let's say, I'm starting to get messages from people that are on our like analytics side, being like, JJ, did something happen in the Asana Academy? Because we're seeing all of these new users, a lot of like off the charts kind of like analytics coming in today. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but like, let's look into this. And so, like, kind of sources were coming together. And someone in our internal Slack channel had actually posted about, hey, have you seen this TikTok? This project manager posted about our certification program and it's kind of blowing up. Well, it turns out we could actually attribute that TikTok post that this project manager, which you can see here, mentioned in her TikTok, advocating for, she had just completed the workflow specialist and was telling other project managers to invest time in doing this because she found value and how it could help her be a better project manager. And so we saw a lot of new registrations for the program driving people directly in there. And I think that just kind of speaks to not only the ways that people are looking for credentials, but how it can really drive the kind of learning and innovation that they're looking for their own careers.
Yeah, that's always exciting to see and exciting to hear. The flip side is when you get the ping of what happened, what did you do, and it's the negative. So it's always great to see
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, the numbers are going up in a obviously a positive way,
Yeah.
and trying to unpacking what happened. So that's such a cool story of obviously the value of the program for somebody to just organically want to share that, and just shows you the power of some of these additional channels that might be outside of traditional. Um, B2B, if you will, channels, right? Like you think about the Facebooks and the LinkedIn's of the world, but
Mhm.
there is some pretty organic and powerful marketing that's happening, obviously, over on other channels like the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world, that are really driving a lot of engagement and obviously, adoption of the program too, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, it showed us too that there is like a community of people out there, specifically project managers, PMO, ops people that are hungry for more learning because learning and workflows and organizational management is such a key part of what they're doing, and that's constantly evolving. So to see that this program could really fit that need there was really exciting for us.
Did you reach out or did anyone reach out to her directly after the fact, and engage with her, or at least thank her or acknowledge, her post from the beginning?
Yeah, I definitely did. I sent her a DM being like, wow, like just wanted to let you know that like I managed this certification program at Asana and your post has like driven so many registrations. So thank you for completing it. Thank you for sharing this. And she was like, wow, that's so great to hear that like it's actually driving people to take action.
That's cool. That's awesome. Um, Well, part of that, and you can see obviously an example over here on the right of somebody actually sharing their earning the certification on LinkedIn. And so from the very beginning, you knew digital credentials, digital badges were going to be critical to the program from especially from
Mhm.
a verifiability, the shareability of them. Why was that such a priority and kind of what made it credible the right fit as you were looking at partners to come alongside you?
Yeah, so that was a non-negotiable, really, was like, okay, if I am earning a credential, I have to have that attribute that is available to me. It is something that I could share. And again, it gives it that validity and credibility, right? Like you can take all the learning that you want, but I think people are incentivized with something to share. People are motivated with elements of gamification, things that you can collect and show that you've earned. So that was always a non-negotiable part of the program. And I think what we really saw in a Credible is that kind of partner for us, that it was like so easy to share, and that becomes a part of their broader digital wallet of credentials that they can earn in other places, to have something to kind of go back to and show. And kind of as what you can see here, there's like other elements where people can really see how this credential fits into the kind of workplace and organization, and the skills that credential has earned for them. And it's so easy to share to LinkedIn. So that was also a key criteria that we were looking for.
That's great. And I know you mentioned the connection. As you'll see here, if you're not familiar with digital credential and what at least a Credible builds into our digital credentials, an ability to do job market insights. So as a learner and it comes into looking at a credential that they're maybe interested in taking, or say somebody shares the credential on LinkedIn or wherever they share it to, somebody can come over to that LinkedIn or that credential page and actually see the job market insights that are attached to that. So if it has skills attached to it, it'll talk a little bit about the jobs that require those skills, the companies that are hiring, the average, income or earnings from skills that are developed in some of those jobs that are associated with it. So it just really completes and shows the additional value for an Asana learner to say, oh, okay, I can earn these, and also these are very applicable to skills that are in the market that are in demand. So it kind of helps close that loop, which is really good. And I will plug really quickly, breaking news here. We are doing a massive upgrade of our job market insights here over the next few weeks. So stay tuned to there. There's some really, really cool things we're doing with those to enhance those for both program leaders as well as the learners who are earning those.
That's exciting to hear.
Yeah, so it's great to share that a little bit more to come there. What I also love about, and if you could talk a little bit about your systems too, as much as you're
Mhm.
willing to share. I
Yeah.
know SkillJar is really integral to your program as far as the where your content is and the actual learner experience. Could you talk a little bit about that, kind of how that flow works between where a learner's coming into your program through the academy, through the certification, and kind of how the systems came together and how you're awarding the credentials, obviously through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So our Asana Academy was hosted already on SkillJar as our LMS. So it was a non-negotiable that whatever credentialing program had to have a native integration with SkillJar to meet our requirements and really meet our timeline. We didn't have additional resources on the ET product dev side to make any bespoke integration. So that was a non-negotiable, which Credible facilitated. And it really just involved me as kind of a Credible owner setting that up, which was a native kind of plugin, and I just had to establish the connection to what is the completion criteria from SkillJar and what is a Credible issuing. So the kind of, is it a certificate or the badge that's being issued? And then it connects the user's information, so their name and email, to attribute that digital credential. What I think is also really important here is it also establishes it as a unique space for the learner, so that if and when they are changing their organization, that stays with them. So their credential is unique to them. We can still see it, but they own it. It doesn't go away if they ever leave their organization, which is really important for people in this space where you're constantly evolving their careers. And so that was a part of it as well. The other piece which you can see here is the like white labeling design element. And that, when meeting with our internal stakeholders, was really important and really stood out about Incredible too, was we wanted it to feel as an extension of our overall Asana web surfaces. So that, navigation line is the same as our Asana Academy. So it presents as kind of a native extension of our learning ecosystem. And so that was an important criteria too, and how we set this up.
That's great. Yeah, that's as a brand leader myself, that is really, really important. And from the learner's expectation, they don't want to be dumped or that on another platform or another area that they doesn't look and feel like the experience that they just came from. And so I know the white label and the branding experience from custom domain, from the header to the footer to all the things, the visual elements, it really looks and feels like Asana when people are earning the credentials and they're coming across it and sharing them too, which is great. Let's get into a little bit of the results. I know we shared a little bit up top on some of the cool results that you've experienced in the first year. If you could talk a little bit about some of those leading indicators for your program, what you track, and how you're kind of connecting that work to some of the bigger business outcomes beyond just credentials issued or courses taken. If you could talk a little bit about that, I would be super interested in learn.
Yeah. So when we initially established the program, the kind of key criteria that we were looking for are people actually going to complete these programs? We were immediately able to see, yes, it was something that people were registering for and completing at a really high rate. That TikTok really helped to drive that initial adoption as well. So the kind of leading indicators were the completions on the kind of like course level, exam level. Um, and we also were looking at customer satisfaction. So we have surveys at the end to just measure, is this what you expected? How likely you to recommend, et cetera. So we saw high satisfaction for these programs as well as kind of those leading indicators. And then on the Incredible side, what we can see as kind of leading indicators are the unique recipients. So, how many individuals have credentials in addition to the total number of credentials issued? And what we saw is that there's actually quite a number of people that are earning multiple credentials. It's not just a one and done. People are issuing more. I can tell a little bit more of a story of like kind of what we're seeing now. Like there's some people that I think we have 7 credentials now. They have all 7 and they're like
Mm,
waiting for us to issue more,
that's so
which
cool.
love to hear. Um, the bigger business outcomes that we were really driving here, kind of going back to the beginning, was adoption and revenue, the kind of buyer impact. And off the bat, I had a great partner on our campaigns team who at his previous organization had seen a lot of success with certifications to drive his own kind of buyer campaigns. So he was a really great partner setting up the systems that we needed to make sure that when someone was registering and completing these credentials, we had the kind of whole marketing motion in play to develop the campaign so that we could see leads, so we could see pipeline, so that we could see ARR. And we really were able to see some immediate impact there, which was really exciting because ROI means a lot when you can put a dollar sign behind it. And then longer term, as a business, we were starting to figure out how we actually measure results for adoption. And over this past year, towards the end of the year, we were able to really build out a model for adoption and attribute it to our academy programs, which includes our certification program. And so that we could see now that when a user completes a program in the academy, so a live training or one of our certification programs, we're able to see the impact it has on their long-term adoption. A metric for adoption that we use is really like site visitation metrics. And the kind of two key pieces that we're seeing now is that it really has a high impact for new users. So for new users, it's a critical piece in helping to form lasting adoption habits. So really important. And then it really retains active users. So there's a little bit of a bias, and people that are doing these programs are probably already going to be a little bit higher of adopter anyway. But people that complete certifications are already a higher adopter, and it maintains them as an active
Mhm.
user. So we really see a lot of kind of benefits there that we're able to report back to the business and kind of learn from and keep kind of channeling into the program.
That's great. It's great to see kind of how you've evolved the measurement over time. And to your point, yeah, there might be some level of those earlier adopters or those big promoters are going to they're going to earn or they're more they have a higher propensity to take the courses or certifications as you introduce them. But it's
Mhm.
also great because you're adding on the digital badging, you're adding on the shareability because they wouldn't have anything to share and spread the word and help you basically have an organic marketing machine for the brand without that. So that just adds to it, right? They're having something to earn that recognizes the skills and their expertise, but also having something that they can share that turns into more peers coming into the program over time. So how do you report back to this is super inside baseball, but how do you report back to the business? Or is this something that you're sharing on a monthly or quarterly basis back to your senior leadership or the wider org, or how do you typically report back on kind of the status of the program?
At all cadences, if you know Asana, Asana has built-in status updates. So the certification program kind of sits in a portfolio of projects and work that, I manage with a team. And on a monthly, quarterly basis, we're sharing those results in those status updates that goes directly to key stakeholders and some of our like leaders who are interested in the program so they can get those updates and kind of chime in.
That's great. Very cool. Well, you've built something truly, category defining. It was very, as I think I told you in our initial call, is very meta on this whole webinar itself. On we are Asana users here at Credible, so
Mhm.
building out all of the task and campaigning around this webinar also was done through Asana. So it was kind of full circle there. But if you put yourself back in somebody's shoe, maybe on this webinar that's really still early days of launching a
Mhm.
program or scaling their program, what kind of lessons or pitfalls would you share? I know some of them you shared kind of through the course of talking, but
Yeah.
what are some of the big ones that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say from the beginning, right, you have to have that alignment and cross-functional agreement for the program with executive buy-in. I think that's just like non-negotiable, like where there is a clear kind of goal that multiple partners see and are kind of driving at it with a clear focus. That was immensely helpful for just unblocking resources over time. Another piece, which I would say is like talk to your customers, talk to your users. I was just peeking at the attendee list. I'm going to give a shout out to Larry, who's joining, who is one of our Asana forum leaders. He's an ambassador for Asana, and he was one of the first people we talked to about the program on like what we should do when kind of setting this up and really speaking to the users about what their needs are. How is this really going to help them? What are they looking for? So I think that that's always a non-negotiable and just speaking to directly to the people that are going to benefit from the program that you're building or that you hope will benefit from the program. And then, as you're building it, you're going to have to test and pilot, and which we certainly did. We had like a very early version, which Larry participated in as well, where we kind of gave them a mock-up of like, here's a kind of our example of what we're kind of designing. What feedback do you have so we can iterate on? And then had a like subsequent kind of pilot where we saw success and were able to kind of use that as a proof of concept for later launch. And so I would say like definitely pilot and learn as you're before you really deploy this more broadly. And I would say too, like think about ways that's going to be future proof for you. So for us, it was giving that modularization space that was always a part of our strategy, but I would say that's definitely a lesson learned. If we should have like leaned into that a lot more from the beginning, like kind of followed our intuition, because now we're having to kind of rework some operations that if we would have set up earlier would have kind of saved us time now. Um, yeah, and think about again just the what is the business impact that this is really going to drive, and like keeping that true, and how you continue to share that out.
Of that. That last one, and I know you hit on that, and how having the initial buy-in that you had from some of the executives that have seen the impact of programs over time on how they impact the business at a Salesforce, the likes. Our friend David Leeser always says, look for those Monday morning problems across your organization. So that could be, how does this drive adoption of your product? How does it drive revenue? If it's an internal badging program, how does it impact retention or
Mm.
turnover? Figure out ways that you can connect your learning and go seek out those people in the other departments, or it might be in your department, in your case in marketing, but go seek out those other people to be able to connect the dots, connect the data, to say, okay, how can we correlate, or is there causation that we can attribute to X learning leads to X, Y
Mm.
outcome. And so that one's a really big one, that last one, to really get the buy-in and obviously the long-term investment and return. So thank you, JJ. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to join us. I'd love to turn it back over to Laura as take through, and I think we probably have some questions in the chat.
Yes, and there's still time to submit some using the Q&A box if you have a burning question for JJ today. The first for you is about the assessment criteria for some of these
Yeah.
certifications. Are the certificate exams proctored, or are they more open book, open note?
So this was kind of going back to when I was saying that kind of one of the first decisions we had to make was, is this going to be something that's a high stakes certification program? And so the proctoring fits really underneath the high stakes category, which we chose not to do. So we use SkillJar as our native LMS, and we use their native assessment tools. So while we do put in measures to kind of guard the assessment questions, where it is timed, you can only complete it in one setting. They're randomized question items. It is not proctored, so there are elements of like people could do kind of like open book, and that's in some ways okay for us because we really want people to feel the validity of the things that they've learned. It's not about just the test, it's about the whole process of the learning, which was really our main goal.
Excellent. Thank you. And this one's a little bit about the cross-functional team that you've mentioned. So how
Yes.
big is your design and implementation team, the people with roles and
Mhm.
responsibilities, and what are the roles needed to sustain the program?
Yes. So I mean, I think the first thing I want to say here is like that I am this is I while I am speaking today, it is like so many people's voices and participation that built this program and are a part of the success of the program. So certainly want to give so many shout outs to members of our creative team, members of our digital team, members of our campaign team, members of our analytics team, the list, customer success, account managers, like so many people participated in developing this program. So that is a huge asset. That said, they were a core team of people. We still kind of maintain our little like certification bi-weekly stand-ups. And that really includes, we had a program manager, we had a learning experience designer kind of full-time on it. We also had members of the team that was like dedicated to like the video production. Um, and then at the time of launch, we had a dedicated product marketing manager. She was key in really driving the alignment of the messaging, wrangling other people to kind of get the resourcing and attention. So thank you, Erica, for being that product marketing manager leader for this program. The campaigns manager, Brian, was like essential at the time of launch to make sure we were setting up the right systems and connecting to the analytics teams. So now I'm up to five. And then we had at the time, we were launching this and designing like the web experience, the landing page. We had about two or three members of the creative team that were resourced for the web experience, the kind of initial look and feel, so designing the badges and certificates, and some additional kind of creative that went into it. And so I would say, that's probably like upwards of 10 people that were a part of this initial like launch cycle. And now there's probably around like three or four, including our member of our like digital team, Karen. Huge shout out to Karen, like with which this program would not be operable. She really manages the operations on the skill jar side to make sure that we have kind of the healthy program there and thinking about the modularization and kind of changes to the program that we really need. So 10 to really launch, and now it really is like around 3 to 5 people like that are really resourced to keeping it successful.
That's really helpful. Hopefully now everyone knows exactly who they need to start talking to bring this
Yeah,
across the finish line. Teamwork is the
yeah,
dream work.
yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. This one's from Becky, and she was asking if you share the answers to the certification exam questions.
We share answers after someone passes the exam. We set an 80% threshold on all of our assessments, and you can see what you got right, what you got wrong if you pass. So we don't share the answers until that, and that's a part of kind of like protecting the assessment and the items. Um, Sometimes people have some feedback about that, but that's the decision that we made to really maintain the kind of validity of those questions.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to ask Ryan if you don't mind to share one last slide while we wrap up here. First of all, thank you so much, JJ, for being so generous with your time, your insights, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. As a reminder, you will receive an email shortly with the links to watch and share the recording of today's session with your team members. We dive deep into success stories like this, like JJ and Asana's every month in our newsletter, Certified Insights. And the link to sign up is in the chat and on your screen right now. Lastly, if you'd like to continue the conversation with our team at Accredible, we're always happy to connect. You'll find ways to reach us in that follow-up email as well. On behalf of the Accredible team, thank you again for being here, and we really look forward to seeing you at future events. Make it a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
So.